And welcome back. You're listening to Home Wizards. I'm Cindy Dole.
Hey, I'm Eric Stromer.
Now, I, growing up, had basically artificial trees for most of my childhood. How about you? You probably had
We
fresh.
always had fresh trees.
Yeah.
Love the smell of them.
Yes. Who
It
doesn't?
was a family tradition. My parents and I would go in the cold Chicago winters to a tree lot. And, I loved it. It was one of the great moments in the Christmas season for the family. We had a great time doing it.
And I love that too. Later in life, we did that, but for some reason, it was that time when it was very fashionable to have a flocked artificial tree.
It was
and
fancy
so
looking.
we had a very fluffy one, and I remember my dad putting it up and assembling it so it looked real. But it became like this thing where we, for many years, couldn't get a fresh one because it was an investment.
Sure.
And later, I ended up marrying a guy who had the same attitude.
God bless America.
Geez,
Isn't that great?
I finally got Bill to lose the artificial tree, and now we go all fresh. So,
And was he? Does it make him nervous?
No. It's just he bought that darn $50 tree, and he was going to milk it for everything.
It's like asking him to get rid of his college speakers. It's a tough thing. I know.
So let's talk about how to choose a fresh tree, if this is what you've been thinking about. And by the way, one year we did this too, where we bought a living tree, where we kept it in the container.
And then you plant it in the yard.
And then we actually kept it in the container outside, and then we put it in the yard. So it kind of
Is it still going?
It's still
Look
going.
at that.
It's not the greatest, but it worked out okay.
Well, that's great.
So we know what's the number one tip, Eric, because we see all these Christmas tree lots, and you think, should I get my fresh Christmas tree now or not? And it's sitting there, and you're saying,
well, they'll bring more.
Really? Are they going to come from Washington State and Oregon?
Let's wait for the last shipment.
Oh, there's
the
bring
one that
new
comes
ones.
on the Christmas train.
Oh, I want the new fresh one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Maybe they'll bring a fresh batch,
It'll
maybe just a week
come
before.
right down from the mountain.
Oh, that'd
like
be
tablets.
great. I'm going to wait then for just a few days before Christmas.
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, they don't do that.
They don't do that.
Oh, you know when they bring them all?
Scam artists.
Right now. They're all there now. The day after Thanksgiving.
I know. And
everything that's been cut is cut.
I get mad because I see these tree lots, certain ones, not all of them, but they just leave these trees that have been cut, that have been brought down from the Cascades or from the Midwest or wherever, and they're just sitting there in the wind, in the heat.
Getting dried out. Yep. And if they're on a parking lot,
poor things,
asphalt kind of a situation where there's hot sun, and they're in a tent, and they're dying. They're dying. Every moment they're there,
and so
they're
this is
crying
our
out.
tip to you. The minute you see a tree, rescue it.
Get it.
Put it in water at home.
You'll probably take better care of it in your Christmas tree stand after we tell you what you're supposed to do than they do at the lot.
Yeah. So how do you pick a healthy tree that's suited for your space? What would you first say?
Well, first I would say you want to make sure you bring a tape measure.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because you have to know the height of the doorway or the ceiling that you're going to be walking through.
Wouldn't that be awkward?
It's happened to me many times. And, also the other thing too is when you carry a tree in the door of your home, make sure that you're carrying it with the top of the tree facing outside of your house. Because think of it, it's like a barbed thing, right?
So trunk in
first, because if you go the opposite way, the branches splay out and resist
and
the doorway,
and
you can damage some of the branches,
right? Feathering them, kind of breaking the needles.
So you want to definitely go trunk first always, and when you take it out, same thing, trunk out the door. Okay?
Good tip.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
You can also, if you want to shop locally, you can find a great a tree lot that basically is direct. I mean, some of the tree lots are really have a direct connection to the tree farms.
Sure.
And you can go to the National Christmas Tree Association website to find that tree farm that's near you.
And also, we've interviewed some of these folks that do this for a living, and they really are up in the Cascades.
Yeah.
They're up on the the snowy side of a hill.
It's rugged.
It's rugged. They're climbing up steep grades to get to these different trees. And, some of the trees are more expensive than others because they're more difficult to access. So you get what you pay for, basically, is what we're saying. So things that are super inexpensive and, maybe thin and not quite as well groomed and not allowed to grow quite as long are going to be cheaper. And those are the ones you'll find at the big box store. They'll probably be adequate, but they're not going to be those fancy, the ones that really look and smell, like Christmas.
Now, when you do go to the lot and you've chosen where you're going to shop for your tree, don't be afraid to kind of run your fingers through the tree's hair.
No, grab the branch, pull your hand along the branch.
Say,
look,
hey there, fella.
Hello, big fella. How's that hair? Oh, you must have plugs.
Oh no,
it's not working.
little alopecia.
That's right. So
no,
if the little the branches are falling off,
that
or
means
the needles are coming off.
That
it's
means
dry.
they weren't caring for the tree.
No.
They were just kind of letting it out in the wind, drying the darn thing out.
Sure,
right?
and you also may want to always walk to the perimeter of the lot or where they actually store the trees that are not, out for display.
Yeah, back in the back.
Back in the back. They're going to be probably more watered more often. They're going to be in a darker place.
It's like in the grocery store. You always go to the back to get the best
get
thing.
the stuff from the butcher in the back of the store. You don't want the stuff been sitting out for 20 days. No way.
Or like when I go to some of my favorite grocery stores and they have like these pre-made salads, you go to the back because they have a better freshness date.
That's right. That's why I'm always, Daddy's pulling 5 gallons of milk out before you get that one in the very back.
And by the way, I guess you could bring your own saw to the lot or the farm. You
could.
I mean, a lot
they
of these,
offer to do that for you.
Yeah.
Also, check before you go. I've seen this happen time and again. People probably have Christmas stands in their storage space somewhere.
A big one,
but you forget about it.
Yeah.
And you think, well, I'll just get the one here. It's only another $25. Well, it's $25. You could use that to send me a Christmas sweater. You might as well check to see if you've got an existing tree stand. You could even bring it with you and have the folks put it on while they cut the end off, and it'll be much better, more efficient, less money.
And also, we want them to not only cut the end off, but to do the shaky thing.
Yeah.
That machine that they have, what do they call it?
The shaker.
It just gets all the dead needles off.
Yep. And probably on the car ride home, if you tie it to the roof of the car, most of that stuff will come off.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Now, as far as choosing the right kind, everyone has their own taste, but I guess it has to do with mainly how you like to decorate your tree too. Because have you ever bought a tree where it's like they're kind of limp, and you have like these heavy, great glass ornaments, and there's no way to support it, and they're going to fall.
And then it exposes, horrible, gaps in the tree.
Mm-hmm.
The weight of the ornament pulls the branch down so far that now you got this big open area. So you definitely want branches that are rigid. If you've got heavy ornaments, you want a more substantial tree for sure.
So the key is, are you going to make a late season purchase? You might want to then go for the Douglas fir. Because the smell is good and it's full kind of a blue-green foliage. Or if you want to have kind of like a classic beauty, there's the noble fir, right, that can be turned into wreaths and garlands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's the one that's the sort of generic brand? I like the noble. I think those are real pretty.
Yeah.
I really like
There's
those.
also something called the Leyland cypress, and it's kind of a low-maintenance tree. It has a kind of forest green and bluish-green branches with hardly any scent, but the good news is it doesn't produce any sap either, which is going to be easier on your living room or wherever you're going to put it, right?
And if you've got a ton of ornaments, the Fraser fir has these short, durable needles.
Oh, good.
And well-spaced branches, so those are pretty good.
I think that's the one that I usually have gotten because, I do have heavier ornaments. Or Scotch pine, that's good because it has that really dense, tightly spaced branches that you're talking about. So it isn't like, I don't want to be able to see where the lights start and stop, right? You want it to look like just stars that are just kind of twinkling.
And then, the most fragrant one is called the Concolor fir. Have you ever seen that one?
I've never gotten that one.
Yeah, they're a little pricey, but boy, they just, it's like you got pine sol in your house or something. It's crazy.
Sounds great.
Kind of good.
All right, so those are some of the things that we'll be looking for as we're shopping, for a tree. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is, you might go, well, maybe I should get an artificial tree. Well, a little bit later, we'll talk about the pros and cons of artificial trees versus the real trees, or I should say fresh cut trees. But really, it's kind of like 6 or half a dozen in terms of if you're thinking about whether you're being more environmentally correct.
Right.
You know what I mean? It really is when you think of the transportation of the fresh tree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a lot of man hours and the huge carbon footprint to get a tree to your house, for sure. But it's also the same thing when you manufacture something in China.
Right.
Which is where a lot of those things are made.
Yeah.
So, you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons.
Now, if you are going to get a tree that you want to keep in a container, or later you want to even, put it in the ground, the idea of that is it's great to be able to then basically have Christmas year-round in your own backyard. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And you would just, you just want to make sure that if you find a great tree farm and you dig the tree, you could even dig the tree yourself. Have you ever
I've done that?
that?
I've cut them myself.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
That's kind of a neat thing where you take almost like a sleigh ride out and you do that.
Well, it was actually I think it was a Vega, a Chevy Vega.
Oh.
It was out in the country near where I used to live, and the trees themselves weren't that great. but just the idea of cutting a tree was
very
kind of
romantic,
fun. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. Well, so the idea is we want you to make the choice whether it's live or artificial. I mean, live trees are either freshly cut or balled and burlapped, with the roots intact, and the real trees have that distinctive evergreen taste and all that stuff. But the artificial tree also has some pros as well. I mean, you find the right kind. Some of these pre-lit ones can save you a lot of time and a lot of money too.
A lot of time and money.
When we come back, we're going to give you some more tips on how to care for a fresh cut Christmas tree, because there's all different kinds of theories on what you do to keep it fed, you know what I mean? And no longer thirsty and living through the season.
That's exactly right.
Eric Stromer, Cindy Dole, you're listening to Home Wizards.